Welcome to another solo show. This week I wanted to go over a couple of things that have come up in the interviews in the last several episodes. And I want to call this, or focus on anyway, how lack drives creativity. Now, obviously a lot of people that I'm speaking to are from a time where there wasn't the sort of abundance of either money or items. So from the point of view of the musicians, you just had to make do with stuff. But also there was a lack of information because most of these guys started up before the internet boom. And it meant that anything that you did, anything that you learnt, basically you learnt off a record for the most part. I mean, in some instances, in the case of Steve White, obviously he had access to drum music. But generally speaking, it was what you could get your hands on. And that meant to say you spent a lot of time with a small amount of information. And it was very much a case of going sort of deeper into information and not so wide. So if you think now, you can sort of flit around, learn a little bit of this, go over there and learn a little bit of that, and what have you. But of course, if you think about working something out off a recording, you're going note for note and spending potentially hours on a track. And then once you got that one, you went on to another track from the same band until you probably learnt every note that was on that album. Certainly in my case, that's what you did. So you invested a lot of time, a lot of energy into one artist, and by the end of it, you really knew their stuff inside out and back to front. And again, this is not something that people would do now unless you had some obsessive compulsive disorder. And I think there's something important in that, sort of getting deeply into somebody's playing so that you get beyond the notes. So interestingly, the internet is killing the very thing that made rock music. Not just rock, but anything really, because any musical genre would have been based on the fact that that's what you listened to and that's what was available. And it sort of taps into the previous solo show when I was talking about going on a fast, and applying that to other things. So I think there is an element of that in certain aspects of what makes a player really great. That is that sort of focus and also a limitation to what's available. Okay, so that's an important bit. There's another aspect to this as well. This abundance culture, for want of a better word, comes with its own problems and own shadow. And here is one of them. I spent many years teaching in public schools, and of course, or independent schools. And of course, the parents are paying, or the grandparents in a lot of cases are paying for this education. And of course, this comes with a stigma to it, because, and I know this has been said to kids, that the parents, I'm paying for your education. And therefore, there's a sort of you owe me contract in here. And where I actually saw this, so there's this sort of pressurization going on. Children are being pressured to perform because somebody's paying. And I actually experienced this as an examiner a few years ago now. But this was so profound. There was a kid doing his grade 2 exam, and he came in and he was quite nervous, and which is not uncommon anyway. And he sat there and you asked him some questions, and he started to unravel. So you try to encourage them and everything, and then suddenly he turned around and he dissolved into tears and said, "My mother wants me to get a distinction at this level. I got a distinction in my grade 1, and so on." And I said, "Well, let's just relax a bit and see how you do. And you might be okay." So anyway, he goes out, and there's a gap for me to have a cup of tea or whatever. And the guy who was sort of hosting the venue, who was up in Ipswich somewhere, said to me, "That kid that went in and did his grade 2, what was he like?" And I said, "Well, I told him that he'd sort of scraped a pass, but he'd sort of dissolved, And anyway, it transpired that the parents, I think it was probably the mum or whatever, had said that he'd done really well in his previous exam, but they whatever, they sort of pressurised him to work harder for this one and all the rest of it. And he said that they were really full on. So that just sort of put you in the picture of what was going on for this kid. That maybe, like a lot of kids, they don't put in enough time and all the rest of it. But there was an expectation that because he'd got a distinction in previous grade, he should get a distinction in this one, So, there's a few things here. I don't think that sort of thing was going on at all earlier on. We were doing this stuff because we wanted to do it, and probably not because our parents wanted us to do it. In fact, if anything, they didn't want us to do it. And it was the thing that we did. So we've got a few little things going on here that I think contribute to success, particularly in music, but I would say just generally in art. That could be dance, could be anything, which is a real focus, a real dedication, and maybe not the pressure from the parents. The pressure might be coming from yourself to achieve, but then it brings in this third item, which is it becomes the part of your character. It's the thing that you identify yourself as being. And that showed up in a few ways in the podcast. Kids being let off lessons in order to go and play the drums, or going to play the saxophone, or in my case, I could sort of clear off and, play the guitar somewhere. And that's then what was then what you became known for by your peers. And it was that, every kid needs something to get them off the hook with the sort of characters who were the bullies in the past, gave you a little bit of credibility and kudos amongst the kids, and that could have been because you were a good sportsman or whatever, or it could have been because you were the kid who played guitar, or you were the guy who played drums, or whatever. So there we go. So a few things there. Sort of ponder them. Solo shows are always pretty short and sweet. So, again, if you want to support the podcast, and it's not just the podcast, it's also the charity work that I do, head over to Patreon, and obviously you can find me as Vic Highland. Details are on the show notes anyway. Also, with the people that are on the show, check out what they're up to, because I get them on because I find them fascinating. So hopefully, you might share my sort of interest in what they do. So until next time, see you then.